I'm going to be very brief. It's already been a very rich day anyway. And we hope that words underline that richness, don't detract from it. I'm thinking about family today, my family in particular. For those of you who don't know, and I tend to be more blabbermouthed than I should, my son, my younger of two sons, is graduating high school in this period. He was at his senior prom a week and a day ago, and we had the honors convocation with awards this past Friday, and yesterday we have the West Michigan open house, followed by the West Michigan leftovers, some of which Fountain Club will enjoy today. And on Tuesday, he will go through the line in his cap and gown and receive his diploma, and we'll both be there. My wife even got an award for being an exemplary parent. We all knew that already. It's good to know that the universe acknowledges this basic truth, though. I'm thinking about family because the phrase that I'm using this morning is not the garden phrase. I used that last week. If you don't know, each of those phrases from the Richard Wilbur text you heard earlier is a phrase for each of the Sundays this month as we do a month of celebration. We started with, and chop our wood, meaning the simple labors that we see around us that we need to acknowledge. And then last week it was make our garden grow, meaning the youngsters in our congregation who were crossing over into teenagerness and adulthood. So this week I'm talking about building our house, because all these groups, all of you, are what build this church. But there's a problem I have with the word house. It sounds like where you live, as in go home. House and home, family. I've been thinking about this reflectively because of a book I read in the last month, a book by the professor and now president of Harvard University, Drew Gilpin Faust, who wrote a book called Republic of Suffering, which is about our response to the immensity of death during the Civil War. It's a wonderfully important book, but the reason I'm thinking about it is that she lifts up how in that era, family, domestic life, had become the center of meaning for Americans. Being at home, mom, dad, kids in your home. House and home became really blended together into a symbolic whole. Such that now whenever we think of a perfect life or an ideal world, we almost always imagine it as being at home with our families. Ask many typical Americans what they think going to heaven means, and they'll tell you it's, well, I'm going to be reunited with my family. They would like to have their children close at hand. Domestic bliss is our ideal. Now, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I love my family a lot, but I don't think of them as being perfect any more than I think of myself as being perfect. So if anyone here has a perfect family to whom they would like to live forever and ever, the rest of my remarks will mean nothing to you. And the reason I make this comment is because we tend in this culture to so idealize family that we then put that template on other places we go, like our workplace or our communities, and most especially our congregations. We think of this house, and we like to think of ourselves as a family. And I want you to pause for a moment and say, do you want your church to be like a family? Think about that. I think we need to develop a new idea of the word house. The word house, as Isaiah means it in that chapter 56, from which you hear a section every Sunday in the welcome, to be a house of prayer for all people. There are other houses, not just the ones we live in, the ones we go to. In the Jewish faith, the word synagogue is literally a Greek word that means getting together place. In Hebrew, they use 3 phrases to describe what a synagogue is. It's called a bet tefillah, a bet knesset, and a bet hamidrash, a house of prayer, a house of judgment or discernment, house of law, and a house of study. And when I thought about that, I said, isn't that ironic that that just completely coincides with those phrases I have urged upon you to think of liberal religion as being a place, an institution where we free the mind, house of study, grow the soul, house of prayer, change the world, house of judgment or discernment. This place, grand as it is not the house we live in as a congregation. It is the shell around the house. Because guess what? We are the house. You, me, all of us. This is just stuff. If we weren't here, if there was no Fountain Street Church as an institution, if there were no people worshiping here, this would be a museum. But it's only a church because people in it study, pray, and serve, learn, grow, and live. Over the door that you come in every Sunday, most of you come in that side door. I find that interesting. You treat it like you don't go in the front door of your house, you go in the back door of your house, you go in the side door of the church. Have you ever looked up and read the phrase atop that door? It's a biblical phrase. It was a Baptist church, after all. They're kind of fond of the Bible. Teach me thy ways, O Lord, make straight thy paths. Teach me. The first thing you read, the first word that you can read if you read coming into our church is teach, that we are a house of learning. Have you ever read the cornerstone for Fountain Street Baptist Church, dedicated to the worship of God and the service of man? Again, those 3 things. Study, prayer, service, to learn, to grow, to change. It's inside the building, but it's only real if we do it. We are the house. This place is merely a room. And now I'd like to give you a little phrase from the same poet who gave us the Candide, the Bernstein. Richard Wilbur, in his poem, The Wedding Toast, writes this, referring to a biblical episode. St. John tells how at Cana's wedding feast the water pots poured wine in such amount that by his sober count there were 100 gallons at the least. It made no earthly sense unless to show how whatsoever love elects to bless brims to a sweet excess. That which is to say that what love sees is true, that this world's fullness is not made but found. Life hungers to abound and pours its plenty out for such as you.